Hello and welcome to a new episode of Wave Work Stress Goodbye with me, Luke Richardson. I have an extra special episode for you today. I'm delighted to welcome Clare Downham to this episode. Clare is an international transformational coach and mentor who teaches the inside out understanding to improve work life, relationships, and other areas of life. She has her own podcast from surviving to thriving with, from what I've seen, a good amount of episodes for you to enjoy. She has a website, www.claredownham.com, with a free PDF called Thrive Beyond the Inner Critic, which I read myself this week and it's terrific. So, without further ado, welcome, Claire.
Hi, Luke. It's lovely to be here. Thank you for having me.
No, excellent. I'm really delighted you accepted. So, um, as I say, I read your PDF this week, and I read it while I was at I was working in my own job, and hopefully, no one I work with listens to this podcast, knowing that. But I wonder if we could kick off there. In there, I read that you're in the education sector, worked your way up the ladder in there, realised as time was going on that this wasn't quite right for you, and one day you thought, this isn't for me, I'm going to do something else, and you developed this, you developed your own understanding deeper of the inside out understanding. So if you want to kick off from back in those days, that'll be great.
Yeah, so I would never say that I chose to walk out of work.
Okay.
There was a resistance that came from my body no longer being able to carry on at the rate that my mind wanted it to, I would say. I'd in the previous, probably the previous year or so, my life had just got ridiculous. Not only was I at the top of the career ladder and then took a promotion. I'd split from my husband. I'd gone a little bit headlong, shall we say, into online dating. High achiever across the board, including in online dating. And I'd got tireder and tireder and tireder, and there were lots of screaming signs from my body that I needed to stop, including really not sleeping at all, to the point of, if I got 5 hours, that was a good night's sleep.
Wow.
And getting sick all the time and being very jittery and in the end, the day that I walked out, I just sort of looked at my computer and it was like my whole body just like a massive freeze response, really. I just couldn't switch it on. I couldn't bend down. I couldn't press the button. I just couldn't start my day, really. And I kind of left work in tears, and took myself to the doctors. God knows how. I drove somehow to the doctors, and at that point was diagnosed with depression. Even though I later uncovered that I'd actually burnt out on an epic scale. Like I didn't work for a year after that. I just wasn't able to. I kept trying to go back and thinking I should go back, and even just by thinking about work, I would get very, very just tired again. Like my body just kept saying, "Nope,
Yeah.
nope, that's not for you now. You're done here. That's enough." So I never did go back. Um, it was a whole year of sick notes followed by my resignation
Wow.
from my 20-year career in education, which was a big. At the time, I would say it's a big thing, but at the time it never felt big. It just felt like I can't do anything else. There is no other option available to me now. I don't know what to do about this.
Yeah.
So I left and never went back.
Well, I can relate to that as well because for for people that listen to this, I don't know. I was a project manager, and I was also signed off sick twice. Once in 2022, and then like exactly a year later, about 10, 11 weeks the first time, about 7 or 8 weeks the second. It's not as long as you, but yeah, summer tea. I went back in 2023, 2024 after the second time, and something didn't sit right with me either, and I did the same thing. I resigned, and I was unemployed for about 2 or 3 months till I got another job. But as we go deeper into this podcast, I know that it was all my thinking. But and in that 2 or 3 months, I never felt better. I felt more better unemployed for 2 or 3 months than I did when I had a job, which sounds crackers on paper, but for me, it was the truth. Maybe it was the same
Mm.
for you as well.
Well, no, I mean, I was poorly. Like
Yeah.
I was physiologically very, very poorly. So I couldn't get out of bed. I didn't get
Mm.
out of bed often until 2 in the afternoon. So I had something called adrenal burnout and adrenal fatigue, which manifests a lot like chronic fatigue. So I would do a little bit and then I'd just be wiped out again.
Yeah.
And then that pattern went on for the whole year.
Like a loop kind of thing.
Well, yeah, I think our adrenal glands are supposed to like work in short bursts, and mine had been like up here at top
Yeah.
level, burning basically for years. I'd been medium level stressed for years and years and years. And then that last year or so, it went to the
Tip of the
top notch.
iceberg.
And I
Yeah.
never stopped. At one point, I couldn't sit still. I couldn't watch television. I just couldn't not be busy. I'd become addicted to busyness, I would say. So in the end, I was absolutely exhausted. So very, very unable to do things, but just tired all the time. I'd burnt out my adrenal system so that I couldn't, and you need cortisol and adrenaline to kind of get out of bed. You need a bit of it, but I didn't even have that. I was in a bad way. So there was a lot of it felt like no decisions were being made. They were kind of made for me
Yeah.
because my body wouldn't allow things to happen in the way they'd been happening before.
And what was the tipping point then? Thank you for sharing that, By. What was the moment where the insight came and you developed an understanding to kind of um change things around for yourself?
So that took a little while longer, to be honest. So I resigned on the 1st of April 2016. April Fool. I was in fact sat on the bus in Leeds bus station when I got the call from my union representative to say that, I could go and there was an offer on the table and I probably should take that. So that was the end of that. And I, at that point, of course, didn't know anything about what I might do with the rest of my life. 10 days after that decision was made, I got an email from a training company that I'd done some little online courses with in the past, saying that they had a hypnotherapy training program they were running. And I'd had a bit of hypnotherapy in the past. I'd kind of found it helpful. So I decided to go on this course, not really thinking I'm going to start a business, but thinking, well, I don't know what else I'm doing. So this course, I'll go and do this course. And I could manage to do stuff like that for like short bursts of learning and things like that. By the end of the course, it was clear that there was a conversation happening in the room about starting a business. And that seemed to be what I was going to do then. And it never felt like I decided to start a business again. That just felt like a synchronicity rather than rather than anything else. So so that's what I did. I started a business in hypnotherapy. So probably about the October 2016, I started my first business. However, I took this same persona. She hadn't gone anywhere. She'd just had a rest for a while. I took her into my business, and the whole driver for everything I was doing was around productivity. So I got really into loads of self-development stuff around productivity and tools and hacks and everything around productivity, which of course there are many, many different things. So I got really into
Absolutely.
reading about habits, all the books that basically mean small habits but have an infinite number of different titles, like Tiny Habits and Mini Habits and Atomic Habits. I read them all, and Mel Robbins' 5 Second Rule and all the kind of
Yeah.
stuff that was about trying to get me to do more because that my self-worth has for years been utterly entangled with how much I'm doing. Like there's a big piece around my value, my worth, my enoughness comes from busyness, and being
Yeah.
busy enough. And to be honest, that went on for years, 3.5 years or so before January 2020, which is just about it's about 6 years ago since I
Yeah.
had
Incredibly.
my very first 3 principles. I never heard of the principle. Well, that's not true. I'd been presented with the principles twice before then, and like many people, just didn't get it. So
Yeah.
I heard Michael Neal speak in 2014 at a Hay House conference in London. So this is way before This is before the burnout and everything. and came home with all Joe Dispenza's books and CDs because that felt like something I could do. Again, there had to be
Yeah.
some doing involved. There had to be some how do I fix Claire kind of stuff. I was already in that kind of self-development world then. And then I think about 18 months, maybe the middle of 2018 again. I listened to the Inside Out Revolution again, didn't get it. It was kind of third time lucky for me when a friend of mine, Peter Slay, had trained with Michael Neal, and he put a post on Facebook just asking for some people to practice his coaching on, and I put my hat in the ring. And again, it would have all been, well, maybe he can get me to do more and fix me. And I just remember crying for pretty much the whole first session that we were together. I was exhausted by the time we finished because the frustration I felt with myself was huge, absolutely huge.
Is that because you had the realization in that session that the real truth of life, or is it a frustration of you've been hitting brick walls and now you found this kind of
I
thing
think
that
the
was it?
frustration was with myself,
Yeah.
like it usually was. It was usually with myself, and it was. I think most of it was just the sheer I've tried everything, and why don't I? Why am I not the most productive person on the planet? I mean, if you saw how much I did, Luke, back then, you'd go, "You are the most productive person on the planet," because and most people who know me will laugh at me ever saying I don't do enough because I've got 80, as we've discussing before we press record. I've got 81 courses on Insight Timer. I've got a podcast with 500 episodes. Like, how ridiculous to think that I wasn't doing enough or ever have not done enough or whatever enough is, of course, which is another thought created thing. But it was frustration with myself, and I think actually, from what I remember from that first session, I was kind of arguing the toss with him a little bit about it, like yes, but, yes, but, like a lot of people do when they first come across the principles. But something over the first few sessions must have landed
Yeah.
because I then began to mostly I listened to Michael Neal's Caffeine for the Soul. That was kind of my first. Michael Neal was my first kind of bigger teacher, well-known teacher.
Me too, to be honest. Other than Sid Banks, obviously Michael Neal was the one I was the modern day one I'd listened to about the
Yeah,
principles. Yeah.
I didn't
But
listen to Sid for ages. I was like, Michael Neal articulates it very well, and I very quickly found over that next couple of months, because we're talking beginning of 2020, which was a fun year for all of us, I remember, um, that there was such a settling down that I hadn't experienced from the endless hours of hypnotherapy, and that's not anything against hypnotherapy. It hadn't brought me to a place of feeling settled without having to keep going back and having more and more
yeah,
hypnotherapy and more inner child work and more poking the past and all the other things I was doing and endless tools and techniques and morning rituals and God knows what. This just seemed to, just by listening to this conversation, there was a settling down of me. So that by March 2020, when my in-person hypnotherapy business had a little problem in that nobody could come to my house anymore and have in-person hypnotherapy, it felt like a window had been again. It felt like a synchronicity that it was time for me to move towards the principles, and that's when
yeah.
I retrained with Jules and Rudy Kennard.
And stay with Michael Neal also, and methods like you mentioned, Mel Robbins' 5 second rule and hypnotherapy. I think the big thing to talk about them is they can work, but only for the people they work for. But obviously don't work for everybody. And Michael Neal explains that beautifully in one of his videos. I think he was at Cheltenham. I think he's at Cheltenham, and he said something like to this lady, "What size shoe can I?" Oh, if that's it, he says to this lady in the audience, "Can I have your shoes?" And she's like, puzzled. No, you can't have my shoes. Like, well, why not? Like, and then he went on to say they might be good shoes for her, but not for me. So methods and techniques don't work for everybody, only
Mm.
for the people that created them or they work for. And I know what you mean as well about the not being enough thing, because obviously I work 40 hours a week for a job. I do this on the side, and I always have that little voice in my head that says you're not doing enough. And I'm doing podcasts, I'm putting Instagram videos up, I'm trying to do mail letters now, blah, blah. And then, I really think, hang on, Luke, how can you not think you're doing enough when you're doing all this stuff and you've only been doing it since October or September, whatever it is. So it really is a compelling illusion that we buy into, which we can talk about more as we go
Mm.
deeper into the recording.
Yeah, it is. Totally. It's this idea of the self,
Yes.
that we believe, and once we believe something about ourselves, of course, that becomes enhanced in our environment. We'll find the places to compare with somebody else, or we'll look at our list of jobs and we'll see, oh, we've only crossed off five, and there's another five, and we should have done all of them. It narrows down our field of vision almost. So we just see more. I remember Michael Neal talking about self-consciousness, and he said that awareness plus judgment creates self-consciousness, and awareness without judgment creates a rising consciousness, which is a very different thing. While ever we're looking at ourselves and judging ourselves to be wrong or not doing the right thing or whatever, that will create this level of self-consciousness where we're kind of watching ourselves, although I'm not doing that, I should be doing that, and we're kind of hyper vigilant almost around ourselves. Whereas if you can look at our behaviors in that non-judgmental way, in that kind of, oh, I seem to be doing that thing again, that's interesting, or I seem to be thinking that thing or feeling that thing or whatever, we can just we begin to rise in consciousness. Then there's a lightheartedness, I think, to that journey. There's, oh yeah, it's okay to experience this bit of the human experience. It's all fine. There's nothing wrong with us at all. Um, and I think that just allows a lot of things to fall away. And I'd say I'm just 100 million%. That's no such thing, I know, but kind of less harsh on myself than I used to be. It's been very interesting while I was saying to you before, I've had a cold since New Year's Day. I think it started to bubble. And of course, New Year's, that time when, back to work on Monday and everybody's kind of buzzing about, oh, it's New Year and where are you going and what are you doing in 2026? And I'm sitting on the sofa watching Call the Midwife, quite frankly. But just being okay with that.
Yeah.
My body, I kept trying to do things and my head was just, I couldn't concentrate properly. My head was banging and I kept just being tired and horrible. And just my body said, lie on the sofa and watch Call the Midwife. Now, I wouldn't have been able to do that in the past. I would have pushed through and kept going. In my first headship, I managed to have pneumonia and work through the entire thing
Wow.
to the point where I got pleurisy. And finally went to the doctors with my pleurisy, and they said, You've got pneumonia." And I was like, "No, I've been working." They went, "You've what?" And I literally had gone to work every day with pneumonia. What a lunatic! But this time it was so nice to see that I was able to just rest,
Yeah. No,
which is
no,
what my body needed.
ignore the noise and just do exactly what your body, yeah, like you said, what your body
Yeah,
needs.
definitely,
Yeah,
definitely,
absolutely.
totally.
And I can agree with that too. I think over the years I've become less. I still do it, still get lulled into it, but I become less critical of myself. And if I do fall into that trap, it doesn't last as long anymore.
Yeah.
I seem to get over things a lot more quicker than I used to. Whereas before, I could easily procrastinate on something for hours, days, even weeks sometimes.
It's funny, isn't it? Because it's like I mean, I always say I was brought up in the tree. I was born in 1971. And, I was brought up in the treat 'em mean, keep 'em keen era of parenting. This is nothing against our parents. They were doing the best they could. And it was well intentioned. The idea was you tell your kids they're rubbish enough times, they'll become better. And the whole way we were brought up was with this very critical style of parenting. I've chatted to mum about it, and she's agreed that is what,
Yeah.
they'd come through the end of the war, my parents, and life was tough and there was rationing, and they were brought up in a tough old world. And they very much had that, you got to get on with it and toughen up kind of thing. And they very much passed that on, or my parents did very much pass that on to me. And that, so we kind of carry that through into adulthood, the idea that to be harsh on ourselves is the way to get ourselves to do things better, because to stay safe, we kind of went for that. Oh, well, I've only got 19. I mean, for me, it was lots around academia when I was younger, the high achieving stuff. And, I've only got 18 out of 20 in the spelling test. And somebody says, well, where's the other two? Well, I'm damn well going to get 20 next time, aren't I? Because I don't want to receive any more of that harshness. We want
Yeah.
to ingratiate ourselves to our parents so fervently that it's such a big driver. Is anything we've learned to stay in good stead with parents is a they can be the toughest nuts to crack.
Yeah, I'm so similar because back in the when I was a teenager in the 2000s, I'd come down for tea, dinner, whatever in the evening, and mum and dad would be talking about days at work, and I'd be eating a meal, and one would be talking about their day at work, and the other one would be talking about their day at work, and I'd seen them having this conversation about how terrible work is and what they had to do and what this person said, what that person said, and I definitely feel like I took that on into my working career as well. Whereas everything had to be a certain way, everything had to be this way, so on and so on and so on. And like you say, we do innocently catch on to these habits, don't we? And take them into our own adult lives as well.
Definitely, we do.
Yeah.
Interestingly, on work, I've been in Jack Pransky's mentoring group I'm in it at the moment, and we've been reading one of his books as part of the. I think it's Seduced by Consciousness we've been listening to and reading, and he tells a story in there about he visits prison and he's chatting to this guy, and this guy's been in and out of prison his whole life for stealing in the main. And he says to this guy, he's really curious about what this guy's kind of belief system is and stuff. And eventually he kind of gets to the root of this guy. He says, well, I don't like work. But I need money for things, so I steal. And that one little belief there that he's probably picked up from, maybe being around parents who didn't work, or
Yeah.
maybe when I was a teacher, I worked in a lot of, deprived areas of deprivation and stuff. And I'd have children who, were, bless them, probably cruising towards being third generation of people who haven't worked. So grandparents are at home, sat watching telly, parents are at home, sat watching telly. The child grows up in an environment where work clearly isn't a fun thing because nobody here does it. So then they learn, I don't like work. And then what
Yeah.
do you do? Because you need money. And, and it's really funny because I'm in a project at the moment. I'm writing to someone in prison through a buddy scheme. Jacqueline Hollows has organised. And it's lovely. It's such a lovely experience. But I just looked up the statistics around men and women in prison, and 96% of people in prison are men
Wow.
in this country. And it makes you wonder, is that because a lot of crime is committed to breadwin? And so
Yeah. That would make sense. Yeah.
the driver for a man to commit a crime is greater because they're the one who has got this innate sense of
Yeah.
I've got to bring in the bacon in some way, and I've got to find a way to do that. And if I don't have a legal way to do that, I do it illegally or whatever. It's just so interesting how, but again, just a one little belief. I don't
It
like work.
it is interesting. Like you say, the man in the book says, I don't like work, but I need money. It might sound unethical to other people, but it makes sense to that person. And it's,
Totally.
when you understand that deeply,
Hmm.
life changes because everyone's got their own belief, whether it's right or wrong, or they have to go to prison and whatnot, blah blah blah. But it makes sense to them. And I
Yeah,
hear it in the news all the
absolutely.
time when I'm washing the dishes and I've got the radio on when the news comes on. This person's in court for this, and this person's gone to prison for that. I think obviously I don't condone what that those people have done, but then I think they were seeing life that way. That's why they did it.
Totally and
Yeah,
utterly. Yeah.
yeah,
And that's true for all of us. It's true for everybody who we all judge. It's
yeah,
impossible. The idea that we can stop judging as humans is ridiculous. I think we're born to judge.
yeah.
It's part of what's kept us safe over the years, judging others. Because we can, is that person from that tribe friendly or not? Is that bush rustling because it's a saber-toothed tiger or a rabbit? Like you judges, like judging is just normal. But I think we can start to connect to people in a much more compassionate way when we understand
Absolutely.
that everybody's doing the best they can in that moment with the thinking that looks true to them. And also, what's my equivalent? You know, when I did a bit of work with Clare Diamond for a while, I was in her membership, and she used to ask that question a lot. You know, what's my equivalent to this? Where have I been like this in some way, shape, or form? Not exactly the same, but something similar. And you can easily find it, surprisingly easily.
Yeah, you can. You can. You think it's not going to get easy, but you always seem to dig deep and find it.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And I think compassion for me, it creates such a nicer feeling than judgment.
Oh, definitely.
You know, um, I know when I'm caught up in judgment, there will be discomfort in my body and it won't be good for me and it will be creating stress in my body. Maybe not, loud, shouty stress, but kind of an underlying, like I can feel it even when I think about judging, that there's a tension in my body, you know, and even those little bursts of tension in our body, that's not the best for our bodies. It's not the healthiest for us. And so if we can just see others more through the lens of compassion, it's so much healthier for us. And we're in that place of calm and love, and as Jack Pransky says, all we are is peace, love, and wisdom, and the power to create the illusion that we're not. It's one of my favourite quotes. And alongside that, I think self-compassion. We've already been talking today about being harsh on ourselves and, seeing ourselves as doing the best we can, moment to moment, where I was talking to a client yesterday about mistakes and how harsh we can be on ourselves if we think we've made a mistake, or we've not done something, or we have done something that we think should have gone the other way. And we don't know what we don't know when we don't know it.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? And then moments later, we have a different perspective, and we go, "Oh, shouldn't have done that.
I, I absolutely love what you just
Shouldn't
said
have done
there.
that."
We don't know what we don't know, and we don't know don't know it, and that's where the judgmental comes in from other people. Because when you understand that that's true for the other person, you
Hmm.
kind of understand why they did something or said something or did it this way when it didn't make sense at the time because we didn't know. I've got two kids, and it doesn't happen very often because it drives me mad sometimes. But when they're fighting, I love it when I drop into that space where I can parent better, see that compassion, give that understanding more, dig deep, like I said earlier, and make the right decision with it. Like it's much easier and nicer, like you say, to be in that place than to kind of be in your head and deal with it and do it wrong or think, well, maybe I shouldn't have done it that way or said that or said that. And yeah, doing it from a place here is just so much better.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I wish I'd known this when my kids were little. They're getting on now. 26 and 24, so
Wow.
they're not little anymore.
Yeah.
Um, but
But the rule,
yeah,
but the rules are the same, I guess, even though they're a lot older. You do it from a
well,
place of compassion.
interestingly,
Yeah.
my son is an actor, and I was helping him out with his tax return the other day, and my daughter just happened to be here as well. So I had the two of them, and he was winding her up. Something stole her phone, and then was trying to tickle her feet, and just they were bickering like they used to do when they were 5 and 7. And I did manage to notice, like, I noticed that rising. Oh my God. I jokingly said to them, I said, you are re-traumatizing me here with your behavior. But we kept it stayed giggly and silly and not, not like it used to be when
Yeah. Yeah.
because
Five and
they're
seven,
too.
that's how old mine are at the minute as well.
Oh,
So you
right.
got the
Yeah.
ages spot on
Yeah, there you go. Yes, I
in the
remember. Well, I remember
comparison.
the being definite phase when I wouldn't let them brush their teeth in the bathroom together because they couldn't be next to each other out the sink without. She's got the toothpaste and she won't give me it, and whatever else. It was yeah, those fun times.
Yeah, they are fun indeed.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so.
So have you got any like client stories? You don't have to name names, but stories where you've been speaking to someone about this understanding and the transformation has been like profound, like they're just an entirely different person and it's kept going so safe. 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, I've got loads of stories, but one of my favorite ones is just a one-off session I had with this young man when I first, it must have been late on in 2020 because he did come to the house. So it must have been after we were allowed to, we had to do this like dance to get him in the house, with us staying 2 meters apart, and I had the chairs set 2 meters apart so we could be in the room together. And he just had this thing about waking up feeling grumpy. That's why he'd come to see me. He said, I
Okay.
wake up feeling grumpy. And it was just like, well, why is that a problem? Why does that matter? And then we kind of explored the principles a little bit more. And I was quite early doors with it, but he popped in front of me. Like he just you could see something had just gone. He was only quite young, and I often think younger people pop faster. They seem to younger people seem to kind of get it quite quickly, and he did, and he spent most of the rest of the session just saying, "Oh, why doesn't everybody know this?" Like this is just so. He was a bit outraged, actually. I think he hadn't been. Why wasn't I taught this at school? This is
Yeah.
outrageous. Like he
I
was
still
like
say it now. I know about 10
proper,
years. Yeah.
proper outraged. He really was. It was quite funny, actually. But I mean, I think like what I see about my clients, if we can go like more general than that rather than specific with my current clients, is that such a sameness about human beings that I hadn't quite realized existed in the way that it does. So a lot of my stuff is around helping people not listen so much to that very critical voice and tune more into a kind of voice, a more inner knowing kind of thing, so they feel more guided. And I'd worked a lot with mostly middle-aged people, to be fair, for quite a while, and then I suddenly got this little surge of younger clients, like in their 20s, early 30s. And what was very interesting is that they were all still coming with that critical voice. I kind of thought it was a product of an older style of parenting, I guess, than perhaps what's happening now. But it's been very interesting how much listening to that horrible voice about ourselves just stops people in so many aspects of life, whether they're it's from business owners to people who are high up in bigger businesses and individuals who come to me for all sorts of different things. But that seems to be a key feature of people not feeling and not doing what they really want to do with their lives, not behaving in ways they really want to behave, is because they have a beautiful idea and then a big noisy, horrible, harsh voice says that's not good enough or you're not doing enough or whatever.
Or you
And I
can't
think
do, or you can't do that. That's another one.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
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 Or I often find with inner critic, it's that it's like it was that harsh with high achievers, you see, it's that harshness of that always being like the vicious taskmaster with a big whip, kind of just continually driving people forward, and getting them to do more and more and more till the point of exhaustion, you know. I had one young lady, this is a profound one actually, one young lady I work with, she's a business owner, not far from you actually, in Sheffield, and she when she first came to see me, her heart rate was dangerously high and
Wow.
most of the time. Like the doctors were saying, you've got to change something. And within a few weeks, it was down to a relatively normal rate,
That's incredible.
which feels like life-saving, really,
Yeah.
you know.
And that's all just through understanding the relationship with the thinking more. That's it. There's
Yeah, 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 yeah.
nothing medical,
No,
just
no, no,
yeah.
nothing medical. She didn't have any treatment. Nothing happened other than the conversations that we had and her dropping how harsh she was on herself. She was really harsh on herself. Yeah, so very it's life changing, this stuff. I mean, I think that there's still more to be seen around the mind body connection through this conversation. So I don't know if you know, but I've just taken over supporting Sheila Massand in the running of Viva, which is a an event in Spain. a Three Principles event in Spain, which happens in November each year. And while I was there this year, just after the event had finished, I'd been caught up in a particular issue in my life for quite a few years to do with my fiance's ex and her quite special messages, shall we say, and being involved in the trying to control and trying to make it right and da da da. And while we were away, Bruce received 6 messages from her, and he said to me, "I've had 6 messages." And normally, I'd be like, "Right, I need to read them. I need to sort them. I need to get involved."
Yeah.
But I'd fallen into such a beautiful feeling because I'd been immersed in Three Principles conversation for 3 days. And I was so, it was like I was attached to my well-being in a different way, like not in a grasping way, but in a, I feel really, I am not going to read those messages because I know that if I do, I'll get stirred up, I'll be
You'll
churning it
you'll get back in
over,
your head.
I'll
Yeah.
get back in my head.
Yeah.
So I just said to him, I don't want to read them. And he looked at me like I'd got two heads and a personality transplant because that had not been me. Are you sure you don't want to read them? No, I don't want to read them. And late that day, we went for a walk and I said, I just stopped suddenly. I just went, I still don't want to read those messages. What's wrong with me? It's so strange. And the weirdest thing, the best thing about it was I'd had this really weird little patch of eczema on my foot. I don't have eczema anywhere else on my body. This patch of eczema on my foot that literally healed overnight. As soon
Wow.
as I dropped that package of rubbish, it just healed
Healed.
overnight. And I just think that, and I know there's so many other stories like that. Um, we're exploring it in a couple of weeks in V. We do like breakout sessions in Viva, and we've got Hannah Studley, you may know, and
Yes. Is
yeah,
it is it spelled
painless.
Chana?
Yes, that's
Yes,
right.
I
Yeah,
know who
she
that
does a
is.
lot of
Yeah.
work around
Yeah.
pain and physical
Yeah.
health, and her and Ellen Freeman are going to do a breakout session for
I've
Viva.
listened to a few of her podcasts in the car on the way to work before. She
Yeah, yeah.
specializes in more the body in terms of pain, doesn't she?
Yeah,
From
yeah,
memory,
physical
yeah.
health,
Yeah.
yeah, hormones, all sorts of
Yeah.
things. She's her most recent book, I think, is called Beyond Diagnosis.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, and her and Ellen Freeman are going to do like a Viva breakout session, which is where you get a taste of what's it like to be at Viva, kind of online Zoom version. And again, it's going to be about the mind-body connection because I think that I'm seeing so much more about that now that when the body is settled and calm, physical health can also like thrive more than when we are caught up in our thinking.
Same with like you said about you having a cough and cold at the start of the year. That's exactly what you did. You kind of just rested into that space and then let the body, let the intelligence of life take care of it for you. And that's the same
Yeah.
with our thinking, but we're so used to sorting things out. We think that's the same as what we need to do in our head. We need to sort it out all the time. Just leave it alone. It would just settle. Just like the eczema does and just like the colds do.
Yeah, I'm laughing because that is just like so the opposite of how I used to be. Like
Same,
I'm
same.
recovering control freak is probably not too harsh a title for me. You know, that I just thought everything was my job to sort out. And it's been very interesting the last few months I've begun working with a coach myself on quite a on a regular basis. And it's mostly been around slowing down, really slowing down and doing an awful lot less. And my business has grown so much over the last couple of months. It's actually making me laugh because it's just ridiculous. I was doing, again, I'd fallen back into the trap a little bit of doing and getting into a content rhythm and putting content all over the shop and doing a lot. And it was just not, the energy of it was just not right. And then there's been this settling down and this slowing down and then all these clients and opportunities like you suddenly reaching out to me and saying, "Do you want to run my
Yeah.
podcast?" It's like it's just been very interesting to see that.
Just shows, doesn't it? We think we need to do, and the opposite just doesn't feels illogical yet. Taking a step back, arguably reaps more rewards. It's
Yeah,
incredible.
and I think for me, it's not so much what we're doing or not doing. It's the feeling.
Yeah,
Like I probably will, once I'm over this cold, I'll probably get busier again and I'll do it more and post more and share more and probably make some more calls for Insight Timer and whatnot. But it before it felt just very rushed and a bit desperate and a bit kind of
yeah,
push, push, push. I've got to try and push my business out there and now I don't know, there just feels to be something very energetically different. And I think particularly, I work with quite a lot with business owners and the energy that we're putting things out there from um has like a resonance to it. And if we're putting things out from that kind of desperation, I'm everywhere, I've got to be on every platform, and therefore, I'll create a business or whatever, like that's not as helpful as taking a breath and
yeah.
just following, I think, following the intuitive nudges. Because what I think happens when we follow those, I feel like I would have never used the word God before, but we follow those messages from God, the universe, whatever you want to call it. Like the support keeps coming in. Dominic Scafidi says the universe knows what you want before you do.
That's so
And
true.
and so by following even those little nudges, just post that or just put that out there, and that's probably how this podcast came about.
Yeah,
That as you follow that, it's like the cooperative components kind of come into play. The things that you need appear. They everything aligns.
absolutely. I started this podcast in August. I was on holiday in Gibraltar in the July with my family, and I was just thinking when I was there, I have no idea how to do a podcast. And I was thinking about doing a podcast, and I kind of like let the intelligence come to me, and then all of a sudden, one step here, one step there, one step here, one step there, boom, I've got a podcast.
Mm,
Like you said, the universe, if the universe gave it to me before I knew about it. But yeah,
that's
6 months ago,
brilliant.
I had no idea how to do a podcast. Like, no clue
Well,
whatsoever.
my podcast came about such a bizarre way. I'd been, there's a message out there. If you're a coach, you should have a podcast. And that had been bubbling around in the back of my head. But then I was working with a client and I said to her, can you watch some of my videos? So at that point, everything that's now on my podcast were videos. So I'd done them live on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube. So they were all out there. And I said, can you listen to some of these videos? Watch some of these videos, in between sessions, they'll be really helpful. So next session, she came to me and she said, and this just shows how the universe is just dropping these little nuggets. She said, I'm watching your videos while I'm driving. I went, she said, it's okay. I've not got the video on. I said, well, I'm just not sure the police would quite see it that way. I said, you might be very calm when they pull you over, but it might not be such a good idea. So I thought, how can I solve this problem for this client? And all I did was I had the audios because I'd recorded them on StreamYard, I think, and downloaded the audios, put them onto Spotify.
Yeah.
And when I'd finished the process, I kind of went, "Oh, I've got a podcast." How did that happen? It was like it was the most like it was not
Wow.
me, I'm going to make a podcast today. It was like, oh, I've got this problem to solve. Again, this is where the intellect is so helpful. This is what our intellect is for. Here's a real life problem. I do not want my client to get arrested for watching my videos on YouTube while she's driving. What's the solution? And the solution became the podcast that I didn't know I needed or wanted. It's like, yeah, it's watching out for those things and noticing them and noting them. Like I
Yeah.
I have a little cute little diary thing on my phone. It looks like a kid's diary app, but every day I'll just write something down where, I followed that wisdom and this kind of fell into place or something magical. Even things like I always say that I've got a very strong weather spiritual team. I'm very good at manifesting good weather. So my fiance and I'll go for a walk and we'll get in the car and then the heavens will open and we'll have just missed it. And I write little things like that down, like, oh, look how the rain started. It happened yesterday. I went for a walk yesterday and just as I'm walking back to the car. started to spit, and I was like, oh, look at that. It gave me this little window when it wasn't
Yeah,
raining, and then I got in the car and it started. So
I love it when that happens.
yeah, yeah,
One of
yeah.
the best feelings.
There's magic everywhere, and we just
There is.
need to notice it, I think.
Yeah, yeah. So obviously, this isn't like the guy you mentioned, one of your clients. Like, why is this not taught in schools? Are you hopeful that this will one day be taught in schools, or what's your take on that?
Yeah, well, it is being taught in schools in various places. Some
Oh,
amazing
great.
people doing work in schools. There's quite a few different programs now that exist created by with three principles underpinning them. Um, whether it will ever, I don't know. I think what will more happen is that this will just become the principles of psychology, and people will, um, everything will be underpinned by it. So
Yeah,
whether it's teacher training or whatever, but how long that will take, I don't know. I like many people who, when you come across the principles, you're like, everyone needs to know this right now. What can I do about that? And I have. I mean, I've done, as you know, I've done a lot. Um, and I guess we'll never know how long that's going to take or how it's happening really. But we just have to keep doing our bit. And the biggest bit we need to do is deepen our own grounding. Because what I see is that as I settle down more, the world doesn't seem to be as awful as we might believe, We can I can see more and more the well-being in other people, the mental health in other people. Um, that's there for everybody, even the people who lots of people would say don't have access to mental health. I just don't see it in the same way anymore.
no,
Um, so I think our own level of understanding our own, grounding our own consciousness is the only thing really that we do. And then from that settled place, we will naturally share it into the world. I've been an Insight Timer teacher now for nearly 5 years, and I've got over 5,000 followers on there. So that's 5,000 people who've learned about the principles directly from me. Plus, I've also taught a lot of three principles people, teachers and coaches and mentors and people to actually set up their profiles and stuff on Insight Timer. So again, even more people can. And that's what we do. We just follow those nudges and keep sharing where we can and keep spreading it where we can. I think the issue, I don't know what it's like in the rest of the world, probably the same, but the issue with schools in the UK right now seems to be lack of money.
absolutely.
Lots of
Yeah,
I was mentoring a lady who's done the iHeart training, and she was trying to get into schools, and many of them were saying, "We love it, it's beautiful, we really want it for our children, and we can't afford
yeah.
it." That was kind of where they were coming up against barriers, I think.
No, I love that. I love how you say developing your own grounding helps give it to us. It's so true. I think I've fallen in the trap of it as well. I know about the principles. I want to teach it. What can I do? I can do this. I can do that. And I'm thinking I'm in my own movie of rushing around trying to get the principles out to people, whereas I just need to settle down and just get my own ground, like you just said.
Mm. And do what you're doing, Luke.
Yeah,
You're creating something that people will learn from.
yeah, absolutely. So, have you got anything else you'd like to add before we conclude the podcast? Anything else you might have missed or wanted to say?
No, not that I can think of. No, all good. It's been a pleasure. It's been
No,
really
as been a
fun.
pleasure, and I'm hoping there's a lot of people out there that may have gone through a similar experience to you or going through it now that can listen to this recording and what I love about the principles also about this understanding is it gives hope to everyone in any circumstance. So if anyone's going through this similar situation to what you did when you were teaching, whether that's in education or any workplace, because that's what my podcast and my niche is about. It's about workplace stress,
Mm.
which is why I'm really glad I got you on that. 'Cause I didn't particularly know that about you when I asked you to do it about your experience with work, but it gives people hope that there is something else they can tap into, and it might not necessarily mean that they have to leave their job or get a new job, but it can just bring them home. And from there, they'll just do the best thing they need to do for them, whether they stay in a job or get a new job or do something completely different like you did.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I think once we understand the inside out nature of life, we just make different decisions and we make them in a much more settled and calm and aligned way. And like you say, after learning this through working with a coach or a mentor or whatever, you may well find that your job is the most wonderful thing ever,
Yeah,
and you fall back in
yeah,
love with it, or or your relationship, or whatever, or you very calmly decide it's time for a change,
yeah.
and that's okay too.
It reminds me of George Pransky saying that beautifully on one of his recordings that my father-in-law gave me. It's something like the right job, something like the right job could be the right job for you, other than the thinking that you bring to it. It could be just as simple as that. And we see it, don't we, all the time? People who have dream careers get there and not quite fulfilled, but maybe it's just a case of change the relationship with the thinking, the illusion, to do the career the best to their ability and do what they want.
Mm. Yeah, and interesting as you mentioned thinking there, I find my kind of connection to the principles has changed a little bit over time to be much more about the felt sense of anything.
Yeah,
That's the guidance, and
absolutely.
we can't change our thinking, but I think when we see the suffering being created in the body, there is an inclination to drop, like a hot stone, to drop certain
Yeah,
types of thinking. Like I did with the messages with my fiance's ex, like suddenly it was just like, no, no, I know that thinking is going to take me. I think it's like, when you see in the cowboy films where the steam train goes down the track and then goes and falls off the end of the track into the crevice
yeah,
because some robber's blown up the track or whatever. That sometimes our trains of thought can be like
yeah,
that. But I find that, this understanding helps us to get off those trains of thought
yeah. And
much earlier.
and the messages, I guess, it didn't make sense to bang your head against the wall.
No, no, no,
You know,
no, no, definitely. Yeah, there's lots of lovely metaphors about that,
there
that
is. Yeah,
that when we know where suffering is coming from, that it will not make sense to carry on down that path of suffering. And it's just that most of the time, until we come across an understanding like this, we perhaps don't understand that our suffering is coming from inside. It often looks still to me on a daily basis. You get my other half on here, Luke, and he'll tell you all about how the world works in this house. He's still. I often we joke. He understands the principles as well. He's quite grounded in it. But we will joke. I will joke and say, no, you're still the thing that only works outside in, mate. When he's not loading the dishwasher right or whatever. So we can have a little joke about that. But when we see that that's not true, um, we have a much nicer experience of life, and we can make decisions then and go in directions that are much clearer.
I think that's a beautiful, beautiful place to end it. So when I do the editing and upload, I'm going to put all your details in the notes section to your website, your link to that, the PDF link, your podcast, etc. Do you want to take this opportunity to say what you have coming up in 2026 to anyone who might be interested in in knowing about you more this year?
Yeah, so I'm mostly working. Well, my business has kind of taken two little forks recently. So there's my one-to-one work with people. That's generally with business owners, professionals who'd like to just access their well-being on a more regular basis, feel more grounded, move through life with more ease. Calm, clarity, and ease is often what I talk about. But then I love to work very specifically with business owners around that to create business without busyness, because so I often say mental well-being without the work and business without busyness because I love alliteration because I'm an ex-primary school teacher. So I just love the alliteration. But the other string to my bow is around learning about Insight Timer, which for three principles, if anybody three principles based, or anybody who wants to share a message into onto a platform that's slightly different to perhaps social media and other places that we can get caught up in. Um, it's a very aligned, beautiful spiritual space to share your content. So anybody who's interested in finding out about that, I am very versed in that, and I do regularly run a little course to guide people to get started on Insight Time.
Wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. Well, Claire, thank you very much for taking the time out to do this podcast, especially at the weekend. Yeah, I'm looking forward to listening. You know what? I enjoyed it that much. I'm going to listen to it back myself, I think. You know, when you get actors and actresses who say they don't like listen to their own films, I'm a bit like that, but I think this one I will do. I've actually really enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure, Luke. Thank you. Really,
Perfect. Perfect. Thanks, Claire.
thank you.